The year is 2624, and the halls of the academy hum with nervous energy. Students gather for the awakening ceremony, a ritual that defines their future paths. The headmaster stands on the dais, warning the crowd against rash class changes. Summoner and engineer classes require vast resources beyond the reach of most commoners. The air vibrates with anticipation as the students await their turn. Years ago, a virtual reality game called Eternal collapsed into the physical world. Monsters and strange races flooded the earth, forcing humanity to adapt through levels and skills. Paul White stands among the restless students, his mind fixed on his sister Cindy. Her mysterious illness drains his meager savings, leaving her teetering on the brink of death. He needs a combat class to secure the funds for a high-level priest. A level 24 mage steps forward, his hands crackling with faint blue energy. He activates the magic circle, and the floor glows with a blinding, ethereal light. Students whisper about the mage's high income, their eyes wide with envy. Mr. Smith, a fifth-class homeroom teacher, gestures for the student named Mike to enter. Mike steps into the light, but the circle flickers and fades into a dull gray. He has failed to awaken a combat class, marking him for a life of low status. The crowd sighs as the statistics of the year confirm the grim reality. Finally, Mr. Smith calls out the name of the class representative, Paul White. The surrounding students murmur, expecting greatness from the academy's top academic performer. Mr. Bell, a sixth-class teacher, notes that only 16 students have awakened combat classes so far. A nearby instructor chuckles, boasting that his own class has already produced 21 warriors. Suddenly, the teachers fall silent, watching as Paul remains frozen in place. A hidden necklace beneath his collar begins to pulse with an unnatural golden rhythm. The strongest class support system activates, flooding Paul's mind with a prompt. A rookie starter gift and the S+ talent, Protection of the Sacred Angel, await his acceptance. Paul rubs his eyes, staring at the translucent system interface hovering in the air. He bought the cheap trinket from a street vendor years ago, never expecting a miracle. A golden beam of light descends from the ceiling, engulfing the entire magic circle. Priests and mages in the back of the room gasp at the rare talent phenomenon. A spectral winged angel manifests in the light, casting a glow over the hall. A glowing golden seal burns into Paul's forehead, marking him as the chosen vessel. 3 unique, never-before-seen class options appear before him in shimmering text. The crowd watches in awe as the Mage of Light, Sacred Priest, and Saint Knight materialize. Paul evaluates the options, weighing the pure DPS of the Mage against the utility of the Priest. The Saint Knight offers a perfect balance of offense, defense, and holy support. He chooses the path of the Knight, and the system confirms his new status. The Knight figure in his mind raises a hammer, whispering vows of humility and justice. A teacher pushes through the crowd, his face pale and frantic with urgency. He commands Paul to return home and report to the headmaster's office the following day. Paul checks his status, seeing the surge in his base attributes and unassigned points. He dumps the points into strength and constitution, feeling raw power course through his veins. The Saint Knight mission triggers, offering a trial ground for his new abilities. The world blurs, and Paul finds himself standing in the damp shadows of a mine. Ancient tabby monsters emerge from the dark, their claws scraping against the stone walls. One beast lunges, but Paul sidesteps with newfound agility, narrowly avoiding the swipe. He tries to strike without a skill, but his overconfidence leads to a shallow gash on his arm. Blood drips onto the dirt, and he realizes that real combat is far deadlier than training. He activates a regeneration skill, watching as his skin knits itself back together. Paul slashes his sword in a wide cross, cutting deep into the monster's hide. He follows with a swift pounce, driving his blade into the creature's stomach. The monster collapses, and the system awards him an A rank for the performance. He chooses extra stat points and a basic one-handed sword from the reward menu. Returning to reality, he heads straight for the hospital to see his sister. On his phone, he sees news reports of the Sacred Angel's descent during his awakening. Inside the ward, a nurse stands over Cindy, aggressively switching off the television. She demands 10,000 yuan for the month's medical expenses, doubling the previous bill. Cindy trembles, asking how the price could have jumped so suddenly. The nurse sneers, telling the poor girl that she should simply accept her fate. A man in a suit steps from the shadows, interrupting the nurse's cruel tirade. He questions if the nurse would dare repeat those words in the director's office. The nurse huffs in annoyance and storms out, warning that the money is due today. Paul bursts into the room, gasping when he sees the balance on the hospital terminal. The account shows the full 10,000 despite his earlier struggles. Two men stand by Cindy's bed, one of them introducing himself as John Wilson. He claims to be the mayor's secretary, here to speak with Paul about his future. Paul frowns, wondering why a man of such power would seek him out. John suggests they talk in private, away from the sterile air of the hospital room. They walk to a nearby cafe, the weight of the city's attention following them. Students whisper in the hallways about the hidden class that appeared at the academy. They gossip about the young man's sudden rise and his striking appearance. John and Paul sit across from each other at a quiet cafe table. John offers congratulations on the awakening, but Paul dismisses it as mere luck. John shakes his head, noting that an S-grade talent is never just a matter of chance. The mayor takes a personal interest in the young man's progress. John slides a single, heavy key across the table toward Paul. He explains that the key opens a vault containing resources for the upcoming exam. The mayor clearly expects a return on this investment in the future. John adds that a professional medical team will monitor Cindy around the clock. A level 36 second-grade priest will arrive soon to begin her treatment. Paul nods, accepting the terms as the only way to save his sister. He returns to the hospital to share the news with a thrilled Cindy. She jokes that she might need to cling to him as a lucky charm. Paul tells her to focus on her health instead of the rumors. Cindy asks about the exclusive skills granted by his Saint Knight class. Paul describes the blade of pure white for attacking his foes. He mentions the slow recovery skill for mending wounds and easing pain. He explains the weapon blessing skill designed to support his allies. Paul activates slow recovery, placing his hand gently on his sister's shoulder. Cindy sighs as a warm, comforting glow envelops her tired body. The sharp pain vanishes, and she feels warmth returning to her hands. She cheers, calling him an amazing brother with a wide, bright smile. The next morning, Paul arrives at the academy to find a crowd waiting. Dozens of universities have contacted Mr. Clark to recruit the talented youth. 4 teachers from the top 10 universities stand in the lobby. Each instructor is a high-level veteran with a secondary class. Paul feels surprised that the top 3 prestigious schools are absent. Mr. Clark explains that those institutions only recruit based on exam scores. They ignore raw talent and offer no special admission programs. The headmaster leads Paul into the classroom to meet the waiting recruiters. Mr. Stephen Adams from Ryang University stands with his arms crossed. Mr. Stuart Lewis represents Chuan Nan University with a sharp gaze. Miss Catherine Evans and Mr. Elijah Bell wait for the Hanchong and NG schools. Paul bows to the group, his posture humble and steady. Mr. Adams cuts the pleasantries to present the Ryang University offer. He promises 2 million yuan and 3 exclusive Saint Knight skill books. Paul stares in silence, stunned by the sheer wealth of the deal. Most families struggle to earn 6,000 yuan in an entire month. Mr. Lewis speaks next, offering 3 million yuan and annual skill books. He promises training under a level 56 tertiary awakened knight. Miss Evans scoffs, claiming the other offers lack genuine sincerity. She offers 2 million yuan and a priceless B-class cultivation resource. Mr. Clark watches the negotiations with wide, greedy eyes. Paul apologizes, stating his firm decision to decline all special admissions. A heavy silence fills the room as everyone stares in shock. Paul explains his goal to enter the top 3 universities in the nation. Sukong, Qingjing, and Modu accept only 1,000 students per year. Elves, giants, and other powerful races compete for those few spots. Mr. Adams lets out a sharp, mocking laugh at the young man's ambition. He calls Paul an ignorant brat blinded by his own sudden success. Mr. Adams radiates a powerful, suffocating aura that rattles the windows. He warns that Paul is weak and lacks the stats to survive. He claims the boy will remain at the bottom even if he passes. Mr. Clark steps between them to shield his student from the pressure. Miss Evans watches closely, noting that Paul remains standing without flinching. She admits to herself that the boy possesses an extraordinary spirit. The teachers eventually leave, frustrated by Paul's refusal to listen. Miss Evans offers a final warning about the dangers of the path ahead. Paul stands alone, his eyes burning with a quiet, fierce determination. He spends the next month pushing his system to its absolute limit. Exam day arrives and the students gather at the central stadium. The notorious examiner Yang stands on the podium watching the crowd. Students whisper that Paul is arrogant for rejecting the university offers. Paul walks into the arena, his presence drawing every eye in the room. He feels the raw power of his leveled-up stats surging within. The entrance to the secret realm glows with a dark, swirling light. Cat monsters lurk in the shadows, while minotaurs patrol the forest floor. Mr. Yang announces that 5-person parties are allowed for this trial. He warns that death in the realm is permanent and real. Most students group up, but Paul steps toward the portal alone. Director Sean Wesley shouts in protest at the dangerous solo decision. He argues that a Saint Knight is wasted without a team to support. The director worries that the government's investment will go to waste. Mr. Clark watches the monitor, trusting in his students' hidden strength. Paul enters the dark forest, axe gripped firmly in his hand. A monster lunges from the bushes, but Paul swings his weapon instantly. The beast falls, and a system prompt confirms his stat increase. He has reached level 10, with stats matching a level 13 warrior. He activates Weapon Blessing, cloaking his axe in a golden light. His S+ talent amplifies the buff, sharpening his accuracy and speed. A wave of monsters attacks, but Paul moves like a blurred shadow. He executes a perfect blade of pure white at the moment of impact. The radiant light tears through the creatures, killing them instantly. The teachers in the stadium watch in stunned, breathless silence. Mr. Wesley notes that Paul's tactics are reckless and consume too much stamina. He predicts the boy will collapse from the weight of his own axe. A new, larger wave of monsters emerges from the thick black fog. The 100 cat monsters swarm the arena in a chaotic, snarling mass. Paul swings his heavy axe in a wide, whistling arc. The blade tears through the front line, scattering the beasts like autumn leaves. He lands a final, crushing blow on the last remaining cat monster. The heavy iron door to the next level grinds open with a metallic screech. A student in the stands records the spectacle on a glowing projection device. He tells his followers that Paul White is clearing the nightmare map at record speed. The screen shows a timer ticking down at 3 minutes and 17 seconds. Paul remains standing in the center of the arena, his breath steady and calm. The girl named Nancy recalls the director's warning about wasting stamina on the first wave. The 5th-class teacher watches the screen, a proud smile tugging at his lips. Paul steps across the threshold into the second stage of the trial. A squad of trained minotaurs and cat-type monsters waits in the shadows. Warrior, healer, and mage units stand in a perfectly disciplined formation. A dark curse flares around Paul's armor, turning his vision momentarily red. The crowd gasps, fearing the hero is finally trapped in a lethal position. Paul grips his axe and activates the Cross of Sacred Light. A massive, glowing cross erupts from the ground behind his back. Golden flames wash over the enemy squad, searing their flesh with holy heat. Director Wesley shouts that the boy is using a rare Grade 8 skill. He wonders how a student with limited resources obtained such a powerful technique. The lone surviving minotaur enters a glowing, violent berserk state. It slams its hooves into the earth, triggering a massive war stomp. The ground fractures, but Paul counters with a precise, shimmering air slash. He follows the strike with a blinding blade of pure light. The massive beast collapses, but its chest continues to heave with shallow breaths. Paul stomps his boot onto the monster's face to ensure the threat is finished. The heavy boss room door slides open to reveal a dark, cavernous chamber. Observers in the stadium stare in disbelief at the hero's rapid progress. Paul has cleared the second stage in just 59 seconds. Director Wesley praises the boy's perfect timing and absolute control over his strength. He tells Mr. Clark that the second academy will finally produce a true elite. A student asks why Paul is pushing forward without taking time to recover. The director fumes, worried that exhaustion will ruin the hero's hard-earned advantage. Paul stands face-to-face with the towering, armored Minotaur King. The boss sneers, mocking the human for daring to enter his palace. Paul triggers his full arsenal of buffs, Blessing of Dawn and Gift of Courage. Golden light cascades over his armor as the Saint Knight's form manifests. He charges, but his axe rings uselessly against the monster's thick, leathery hide. The Minotaur King swings a massive hammer, sending Paul flying into a wall. His Saint Knight armor absorbs the impact, preventing his bones from shattering. Paul realizes the monster's agility is lower than his own, despite its raw power. He calculates the timing, knowing he must unleash everything before his mana expires. The system flashes a warning that his energy reserves are running dangerously low. Paul draws his sword and lunges, forcing the boss into a defensive retreat. He strikes from multiple angles, exploiting the monster's vulnerability to high-damage effects. The Minotaur King staggers, its guard broken by the relentless, blinding assault. Paul delivers a final, decisive strike that cuts through the boss's defenses. A system prompt appears in the air, congratulating him on clearing the Nightmare Dungeon. His final grade flashes in bright golden letters, SSS. The hero reflects on his long struggle to pay his sister's mounting medical bills. He knows the system is merely a tool, and his own resolve remains the true weapon. A forest belt and a matching ring appear in his inventory as rewards. Paul walks back into the stadium as the crowd erupts in thunderous applause. Director Wesley and Mr. Clark rush forward to congratulate the young champion. A sleek, magical vehicle descends from the sky and hovers near the entrance. The director promises to deliver the official exam results within 3 days. John Wilson keeps his word, moving Cindy to a secure, high-tech hospital suite. Paul enters the elevator with a nurse, his mind focused on his sister's recovery. The temperature inside the cabin plummets, turning the air into thick, swirling frost. Ice crystals bloom across the walls and floors of the 26th floor. The nurse freezes solid, her eyes locked in a permanent expression of terror. Paul sprints down the hallway to find Cindy's room encased in jagged blue ice. A woman stands over his sister, chanting an incantation to contain the cold. Paul recognizes Sister Leah and prepares to strike, fearing she is the attacker. She stops him, warning that any sudden movement could shatter Cindy's fragile heart. Leah explains that a dragon's influence is suppressing the flare-up of Cindy's illness. Paul prays for a miracle and pours all his points into upgrading his healing skill. The ability evolves into slow regeneration, and he casts it upon his sister. Leah watches in shock as the Saint Knight's light outshines her own priestly magic. She agrees to summon a high-level priest while Paul maintains the containment field. The cold bites into Paul's skin, but he refuses to step away from the bed. A brilliant green light suddenly pierces through the dragon's icy, suffocating aura. A new woman steps into the room, commanding the freezing magic to recede. She introduces herself as Riley Davis, a level 35 priest sent by Secretary John. Riley notes that the solidification of cold energy is a sign of a rare bloodline. She watches the hero with interest, impressed by his endurance against the magical frost. The mystery of Cindy's condition begins to reveal its true, ancient origin. Riley points to the subtle physical traits of the students nearby. She explains that elven blood often manifests as green eyes and pointed ears. The priestess notes that these traits have faded over the last 2 centuries. Bloodline awakening remains a rare and dangerous condition for modern descendants. She warns that success grants control over ancient elemental powers. Failure, however, usually results in permanent paralysis or sudden death. Cindy's persistent suffering stems from her body struggling to contain this energy. Riley identifies the girl's condition as a rare freezing bloodline. A freezing lotus could stabilize her, but the treasure is nearly extinct. Alternatively, a powerful sealing skill could contain the flare-ups forever. Paul stares at his sister, knowing such a seal would halt her growth. Riley advises him to reach out once he decides on a path. 5 days pass in the quiet of the training grounds. Paul completes his daily mission and selects Constitution and Intelligence as rewards. He carefully distributes his points using the balanced 2-3-3-2 method. The Academy speakers crackle to life with the long-awaited exam results. Paul's name flashes at the top of the leaderboard in bold text. He receives a notification for his new divine skills and legendary items. National news outlets buzz with reports of the divine phenomenon at the ceremony. Director Wesley smiles for the cameras, claiming he predicted this outcome early. Reporters crowd the gates, questioning the legitimacy of a solo support class. Skeptics argue that a level 10 clearing a nightmare dungeon is impossible. They watch the leaked exam recordings, baffled by the hero's radiant crosses. A red-haired champion watches the screen from a dark corner. He mutters that the new kid is interesting but currently courting death. A message pings on Paul's phone as he walks down the street. The city government confirms a transfer of $5 million. Secretary John calls to discuss the location of a luxury mansion. Paul leaves the choice to the secretary, trusting his professional judgment. John mentions that recruitment teachers from top universities are already waiting nearby. A man from Ryang University steps forward with a formal greeting. He offers $4 million if Paul signs their recruitment contract immediately. A helicopter descends, and a representative from Madu University steps out. The newcomer shouts that Madu will double any offer Ryang provides. A woman strides through the crowd, declaring she will be the one. She promises Paul Grade A cultivation resources annually for 4 years. Before she can finish, a shimmering barrier blocks their path. Another woman appears, claiming Sukong University will match any previous offer. The Madu teacher adds a full set of golden grade equipment to the pot. The Qingjing recruiter insists she only wants a private conversation. Grace Bennett, the Sukong representative, steps into the center of the fray. She announces that Sukong can provide rare S-grade resources to her recruits. The Qingjing teacher scoffs, accusing Grace of arrogance over past victories. Paul weighs the offers, recognizing that Sukong offers the best path forward. He signs the special contract presented by Grace with a steady hand. Grace beams at the agreement and tells him to pack his bags. Paul expresses surprise that the semester begins in only 1 week. She explains that special recruits receive high-level training to accelerate their growth. Secretary John leads Paul and Cindy to their new 3-story mansion. The building features a private training room and a spacious balcony. Paul asks John to keep a close watch on his recovering sister. He kneels by the bed, reminding Cindy to take her medicine daily. Cindy covers her ears, laughing at her brother's constant nagging instructions. Paul climbs into Grace's sleek car for the long journey ahead. She warns him to hold on as the vehicle begins to hum. The world outside the window blurs into a streak of light. They arrive at the university grounds in a matter of seconds. Paul steps out, wondering if such expensive teleportation was truly necessary. Grace explains that Sukong maintains a private array for military-grade security. The campus spreads across a mountain range with breathtaking, jagged scenery. Paul follows Grace toward the check-in desk, dodging a sudden commotion. A white-haired girl named Evelyn tosses a student aside with a kick. She warns the young man that his unwanted attention will not be tolerated. Paul notes the faint magical patterns on her skin, signaling a demonic bloodline. Grace advises him to remain calm, as diverse bloodlines are common here. Paul nods, stating that he does not hold races responsible for past tragedies. He receives his student ID, which lists his current rank and score. Grace explains that rank 001 is only a temporary starting position. Freshmen will compete in 1 month to determine the permanent hierarchy. She details the score system used to purchase potions and skill books. Paul scans the mission board on his ID, looking for ways to earn. The university contains 3 distinct realms, each with different level requirements. He notes the entry fees for the Goblin Dungeon and the Distorted Forest. Paul appreciates the meritocratic system where strength directly dictates available resources. They walk past a group of students whispering about the newcomer. A student named Mike identifies Paul as the mysterious first-place recruit. The crowd gasps, finding it hard to believe a Saint Knight outperformed others. Evelyn watches from the sidelines, her interest piqued by the hero's aura. A student named Sean Hughes steps forward to block their path. He introduces himself as a level 13 punishment knight ranked 38. Sean claims the ranking system is flawed and demands a duel. A senior tries to intervene, but Sean shoves him to the ground. The crowd hushes, waiting to see if the top ranker will respond. The surrounding students murmur as they watch the Saint Knight stand his ground. They whisper that the Saint Knight class lacks the raw power to challenge a punishment knight. Paul offers a faint, calm smile while turning his gaze toward the challenger. He asks Sean why he should bother accepting such a one-sided duel. Sean tosses out an offer of 100 points to sweeten the pot. He insists that the Saint Knight risks nothing by stepping into the ring. Paul knows that a simple win will not be enough to cement his reputation. He raises his chin and demands a wager of 300 points instead. Sean hesitates as the weight of the massive point loss sinks in. He stares at the hero, clearly intimidated by the sudden increase in stakes. Paul turns his back, threatening to walk away if the challenger lacks courage. Sean grinds his teeth and agrees to the terms at the very last second. Paul shakes his head and tells him that a formal ring is unnecessary. He warns that if Sean does not kneel within 3 moves, it is his loss. Grace stands between them and begins a slow, deliberate countdown from 3. The two knights lock eyes, their stances shifting as the signal to fight rings out. Sean lunges forward, hoping to land a crushing blow before the support class can buff. He releases a jagged blood slash, but the red energy slices through empty air. Paul moves with unnatural speed, closing the distance in a single blink. He delivers a precise, heavy kick that sends the punishment knight skidding across the dirt. Sean drops to his knees, his face pale and his chest soaked in blood. Paul watches him with disappointment, noting that the senior failed to survive a single strike. A senior student rushes to the fallen knight and reports 5 broken ribs. Grace signals for a priest to intervene before the unconscious boy suffers further harm. She taps her interface and transfers 300 points to the victor's account. The crowd gasps, finally witnessing the true destructive potential of the 001 rank. Evelyn steps forward, her eyes narrowing as she calculates the hero's superior strength. She approaches Paul and asks for a private sparring match to test his limits. Paul notices the faint, shimmering aura of legacy equipment hidden beneath her clothes. He chooses the Mystic Light Warhammer to channel his dormant elemental abilities. The air around the campus grows heavy as the two prepare to clash. Joseph Green watches from the sidelines, leaning against his spear with a calculating gaze. Evelyn initiates the dance with a shadow slash, moving like a blur of dark ink. Paul raises his hammer to counter with a crushing typhoon smash. The weapons collide with a deafening boom that ripples through the courtyard. Evelyn switches to a demonic slash, coating her blade in swirling dark mana. Paul grins, clearly exhilarated by the challenge of an equal opponent. He launches a brutal uppercut, forcing the girl to pivot with a rapid stab. A shockwave erupts from their weapons, pushing the surrounding air into a vortex. Joseph notes that the swordsman will struggle to keep up without a hidden trump card. Paul maintains his momentum, refusing to retreat or yield an inch of ground. He activates his angel buffs, causing golden light to erupt from his shoulders. Evelyn staggers back, crushed by the sudden, overwhelming pressure of his divinity. Paul executes a spear of victory, pinning the girl into a corner. She narrowly dodges with a phantom slash, desperately trying to regain her footing. Paul anticipates her movement, already waiting at the spot where she reappears. He pauses his swing and asks if she desires to continue the fight. Evelyn lowers her blade, admitting that the outcome is already decided. She confesses that she withheld her full power and dark elemental abilities. Paul nods in respect, acknowledging the restraint she showed during the spar. She asks to exchange contact information, suggesting they meet again for a real match. Paul hands her his number and gestures for Grace to lead the way. He walks away having secured 600 points in a single afternoon. Grace explains that the freshman dorms occupy the small mountain near the base. The elite, however, reside in independent mansions perched at the very peak. She guides him toward his new home, a structure built for high-rank status. Inside the quiet hall, she mentions the elusive freezing lotus. A party once spotted the rare flower deep within the Tempest Mountain range. She warns him that the information is 6 years old and likely outdated. Paul pulls up his research, studying the maps of the volatile mountain territory. The range appeared after the planet merged with the eternal game world. It remains a dangerous frontier where even experienced veterans tread with extreme caution. Paul checks his inventory, confirming he possesses a resurrection item for emergencies. He decides to purchase immunity to physical damage and a long-range spell. The hero heads toward the mountain range, but a distant explosion halts his tracks. He equips his forest-set armor, the gear glowing with verdant, natural energy. His phone pings with a message from Evelyn, who asks about his location. She complains to her friend that the hero ignored her charms during their fight. Her friend giggles, guessing that Paul possesses an iron-willed, unshakable mind. Evelyn decides to follow him, curious about what he is doing in the wilds. Near the mountain entrance, the Blue Phoenix team struggles against a horde of demons. Luna hurls a bomb, but the blast merely singes the hide of a giant beast. Christy summons an ice spirit, while Sophia fires her magic gun at the swarm. Sarah strikes with her sword, but the monsters continue to surround them. Their transport vehicle erupts in flames, leaving the girls stranded and exhausted. Paul arrives on his white magic wolf, his eyes cold and focused. He raises his hand, chanting a command for the light to converge. A massive, sacred tornado rips through the demons, scattering them like dust. He finishes the spell, allowing the storm to cleanse the remaining threats. The wolf clears the fire, and Paul begins to mend their wounds with regeneration. The girls stare in disbelief, recognizing the top-ranked hero from the academy. They warn him that demons are rarely seen in the outer mountain areas. Paul listens, realizing that a dimensional crack might be bleeding into the world. Senior Sue suggests they retreat to the military base to sound the alarm. Paul recalls the Mage Tower, a facility tasked with monitoring the entire region. Sue points out that the tower only tracks epic-level threats or higher. She worries that a smaller, undetected crack is leaking low-level monsters. The hero watches the horizon, knowing the true danger lies deeper in the peaks. Monstrous screams echo across the desolate plains, vibrating against the horizon. Paul mounts his white magic wolf, his gaze fixed on the distant chaos. He commands the Phoenix team to retreat, promising to catch up shortly. The hero recognizes a familiar shadow amidst the swarming horde of platinum demons. Evelyn struggles to hold her ground, her movements slowing as her time limit wanes. The demons circle her in calculated groups, waiting for her strength to fade. She strikes down another beast, but more immediately fill the empty space. A brilliant bolt of lightning descends from the clouds, reducing the surrounding demons to ash. Paul arrives in a blur of motion, ordering the girl to step back. A colossal demon lets out a deafening roar, shaking the very earth beneath their feet. Evelyn warns that the beast entered a berserk state, doubling its raw power. She prepares a desperate self-destruction, calculating a high chance to eliminate the threat. Paul grabs her arm before she can act, pulling her into the air. He casts the punishment of light, incinerating the giant demon into nothingness. The hero smiles, noting the satisfaction of destroying monsters from a safe distance. They encounter a massive wave of 180 demons blocking their path. Paul instructs Evelyn to move left, drawing the horde away from the main cluster. He touches her forehead, imbuing her with the Saint Knight's team buffs. Evelyn gasps as her stats spike by 25%, doubling her combat efficacy. She follows his lead, weaving through the swarm with newfound speed. Paul plunges into the fray, his hammer crushing demon skulls in every direction. Evelyn swings a whip forged from concentrated demonic miasma, slicing through her enemies. The hero casts a holy shield around her, granting complete immunity to physical damage. He summons a shimmering holy cross, bathing the area in searing divine fire. He calls upon the storm, and a massive tornado descends to trap the demons. A nearby team watches in silence, stunned by the display of human power. Their leader decides they must befriend this formidable warrior at any cost. The Phoenix team arrives just as the last demon collapses into dust. System text flashes before Paul, confirming his level up to 18. He gains 60,000 experience points, though the cap limits his total growth. Paul notes his mana reserves are nearly empty despite his high-level skills. Senior Sue approaches, her eyes scanning the battlefield in utter disbelief. She asks if they encountered any elite generals leading the Demon Legion. Sue urges them to return to the base immediately to resupply. A chilling, oppressive aura suddenly descends upon the entire plane. A legendary demon spawn appears, followed by a massive flying fire dragon. Emergency sirens blare at headquarters, announcing a fourth-tier otherworld invasion. The Snow Dragon Corps gathers at the teleportation square, ready for combat. Major Lewis Thompson prepares his elite troops to cut through the demonic barrier. The Fire Dragon orders his legion to rampage before their departure from Earth. The demon spawn conjures a fresh wave of platinum and gold-grade monsters. Sue realizes they are hopelessly outmatched by these legendary entities. A glowing magic circle manifests in the sky, signaling the arrival of reinforcements. Sophia shouts that the Snow Dragon Corps has finally reached the front lines. The demon dragon laughs, mocking the human army's inability to breach his barrier. Louis examines the dark firewall, noting that it will take 5 minutes to dissipate. He instructs his officers to record the names of the students trapped within. Paul receives a new achievement mission, promising an S-grade talent reward. He steps forward, his presence drawing the dragon's hateful gaze. The dragon breathes a torrent of demonic flames at the lone hero. Paul blocks the attack with a wall of pure, radiant light. With a swift slash, he tears the dragon's wing from its body. Paul strikes from behind, his blade glowing with intense white energy. The dragon activates a fire shield, taunting the hero that light cannot harm him. Paul realizes standard techniques are insufficient against such a legendary foe. He prepares a secret technique, the divine summoning, to turn the tide. A massive golden hand descends from the heavens, casting a shadow over the field. The hand crushes the dragon, silencing the battlefield with a single strike. Lewith watches the display, recognizing the signature skill of the top recruit. He laments that Paul lacks the level required to fully manifest the technique's potential. The demon generals order a full charge, desperate to eliminate the exhausted boy. He reaches for his final, one-time use skill to survive the onslaught. A golden ray of light erupts from the sky, piercing the dark demon barrier. A sacred angel descends from the heavens, cradling Paul in her glowing hands. Her shimmering feathers scatter across the battlefield like falling stars. Every demon touched by the feathers turns instantly to gray ash. Louis watches the display in awe, identifying the technique as divine summoning. Mr. Thompson explains that this is a rare, top-tier skill for divine classes. He recalls a priest of level 58 using this to restore an entire legion. The Snow Dragon Corps once withstood 3 sieges thanks to this very power. Uramis shouts in disbelief, claiming such a technique is impossible for a level 16 knight. The demon Ramis begins to siphon the raw demonic energy from his subordinate monsters. The sacred angel looks down at the demons, calling them a tragic and lowly species. She raises her hand toward the sky and commands the light to manifest. A massive, blinding explosion of holy energy rips through the valley. Uramis roars defiantly, sacrificing his remaining life force to unleash a solar flare. The fire demon condenses his heat into a single, terrifying fireball. The projectile reaches 15 million degrees, glowing with a hollow, violet light. The massive sphere of fire hurtles toward Paul, intending to incinerate him. The powers of the saint and the demon collide in a deafening shockwave. Uramis falls into despair as he realizes his power cannot match the hero. Paul raises his blade and judges the demon spawn to death in God's name. A single divine slash tears through the monster, creating a deep rift in the earth. The dragon tries to flee, but the holy power strikes him down instantly. Leaderless and panicked, the remaining demon generals scatter in confusion. The return formation flickers and fails, trapping the invaders in the mortal realm. Paul collapses to the ground, his body drained of all remaining mana. The Phoenix team and Evelyn rush through the dust to reach his side. They call urgently for a priest to stabilize the hero's fading vitals. Paul's eyes close as a crushing weight settles heavily upon his chest. He wakes up 2 days later in a sterile, quiet hospital bed. Evelyn sits by his side, her eyes red from lack of sleep. Paul jokes that he might have suffocated if he had slept any longer. Evelyn leans forward and presses a soft kiss to his cheek in gratitude. A system window flashes, notifying Paul of his rewards for the recent victory. He receives an S+ grade talent called Death Resistance. To test the ability, he draws a knife and slices his own chest. The wound knits itself back together in a mere 2 seconds. He also gains a lucky potion that grants intense fortune for 12 hours. A third reward, the Holy Flame Halo, appears in his skill list. This divine skill increases his light and flame damage by 40%. A knock sounds at the door and Carl Russell enters the ward. Carl thanks Paul for ending the invasion and destroying the demonic portal. He reveals that Captain Thompson is busy reporting the findings to higher-ups. Carl snaps his fingers, projecting holographic images of the recovered demon secrets. He offers Paul any item from the Legion's vast warehouse as a reward. Paul asks for a frozen lotus, a rare item he desperately needs. Carl confirms the lotus costs 100 million points, but agrees to the trade. The vice captain promises to have it delivered to the dorms in 2 days. Paul breathes a sigh of relief, knowing Cindy will finally be saved. Later that afternoon, the Blue Phoenix team visits Paul's room. Sue asks if he would like to join their group permanently. She leans down, kisses his cheek, and calls it a special thank you. Meanwhile, Lewis reports the existence of medium-sized cracks to the National Council. These cracks allow monsters under level 30 to bypass global defenses. The council leaders are astounded that an 18-year-old discovered this intelligence. They order the university headmaster to evaluate Paul's potential upon his return. At Sukong University, students gather on the field for the freshman competition. The housemasters stand on a raised platform, watching the massive crowd of recruits. Mr. Herbert begins to explain the rules, but teachers notice Paul is missing. Simon, a red-haired student, mocks the hero for his apparent absence. The portal to the secret realm opens, revealing a swirling silver vortex. This year, the university adds an abyss difficulty to the challenge. Strange, dark flames flicker around the edges of the portal's frame. The students stare at the entrance, unsure if they should step forward. The abyss-level portal hums with a dark, suffocating energy. Mr. Herbert stands before the crowd, warning the students to prepare their best gear. The freshman competition officially begins under the watchful eyes of the faculty. Most students plunge into the higher difficulty levels with visible ambition. Mr. Herbert scans the platform, noting the absence of student number 0001 and 00002. Grace tries to explain their location, citing training in the Tempest Mountain Range. The housemasters remain unimpressed, dismissing her excuses as lack of discipline. At the final second, Paul strides into the arena while carrying Evelyn. He offers a brief, calm apology for his delayed arrival. Evelyn beams with excitement, relieved that they arrived before the gates closed. The pair steps into the bear monster nest, choosing the lethal abyss difficulty. Paul activates his buffs, his aura pulsing with a soft, golden light. The surrounding bears growl, their levels hovering near 17. Paul rushes into the fray, eager to test his limits against the monsters. Evelyn draws her blade, executing an instant army-breaking slash. Her strike pierces the thick hide of a nearby beast with ease. Simon ignores them, gathering his fiery energy into a massive, glowing fist. He releases a fire punch that incinerates the air around him. Other students fight desperately, with some already counting 10 kills. The teachers watch the monitors, pleasantly surprised by the freshman's resilience. Mr. Herbert focuses his gaze on Paul, curious about his recent progress. Paul clears the first level in a mere 5 seconds. He uses only a support skill, the Holy Flame Halo. The halo radiates intense heat, instantly turning the bears to ash. Mr. Herbert studies the output, unable to pinpoint the source of such raw firepower. Paul switches his stance, clearing the second level in under 90 seconds. 200 bears fall before his relentless golden assault. He summons the Spear of Victory for the final stretch of the third level. A single, precise strike shatters the remaining defenses and clears the stage. A notification window appears in the air, offering Paul rewards and talent choices. He studies his options, weighing the benefits of rapid steps versus the Focus Halo. He selects the Focus Halo to ensure his skills remain uninterrupted in combat. The portal emits a foul, rotting stench as extra levels become available. Paul descends into the depths, his eyes scanning the dark, cavernous floor. He spots a scattered pile of bones arranged in a ritualistic pattern. These signs point to the worship of evil gods, beings of pure chaos. Lore states that while light requires faith, evil gods demand fresh souls as currency. Decades ago, a rogue cultist sacrificed a city to reach the 89th level. The memory of those millions of lost souls still haunts the capital. Paul finds the source of the rot, a ghost-like bear monster. The beast was once a tribal leader, now twisted by an evil ritual. Its form shimmers with an undead immunity to physical weaponry. Paul taunts the creature, drawing it into a swirling golden tornado. The bear dodges the attack, mocking the hero's reliance on holy light. It claims the protection of a lord named Exia makes it immortal. Paul ignores the threats, setting the ground ablaze with divine fire. He burns away the creature's dark source of energy with relentless focus. The boss falls, and Paul clears the extra level in 60 seconds. A gold-grade Ursa horn drops onto the stone floor as his reward. Paul realizes the beast's revival was merely an illusion fueled by borrowed power. Simon exits the portal, sweating and exhausted from his own struggle. He scoffs at the thought of Paul beating his time in the extra levels. Evelyn stumbles out of the portal, and Paul catches her by the arm. She gasps, impressed that he finished the challenge ahead of her. The rankings appear on the massive screen, displaying the final times. Simon stares at the board in disbelief, seeing his name in second place. Paul leads the pack, having finished 15 minutes faster than the runner-up. Simon shakes with fury, his eyes locked on the hero's composed face. The second phase of the competition begins, focusing on free challenges. Simon steps forward, immediately calling out Paul for a one-on-one duel. Evelyn whispers a warning, noting Simon's rare fire dragon bloodline. Paul stands his ground, waiting for the berserker to make the first move. Simon unleashes his blood berserk skill, his body glowing with lethal intensity. He lunges forward, aiming a devastating fire punch at Paul's head. Paul raises his hand, activating the holy light protection in a split second. The shield absorbs the impact, leaving the hero completely unscathed. Paul notes that the attack was fast, but his defense was faster. He counters with a heavy hammer strike, shattering the fire around Simon's fists. Simon stares at the shield, unable to grasp the source of such overwhelming power. Paul stands effortlessly at his side, leaving the berserker with no space to maneuver. Simon grunts in frustration and attempts to block the heavy hammer with his own flesh. The skin of his arms hardens into glowing reptilian scales. This defensive shift reveals the latent power of the fire dragon bloodline. Paul watches the transformation with a flicker of envy for such inherited strength. Despite the dragon scales, Simon continues to buckle under the weight of the assault. Paul lunges forward, his neck swing detonating in a massive, blinding explosion. Simon narrowly rolls away from the blast, gasping for air. He shouts that his dragon bloodline is not limited to simple melee combat. A torrent of searing dragon breath erupts from his throat, engulfing the arena. The spectators gasp as the flames threaten to consume the entire platform. Paul calmly raises his hand, activating the holy flame halo. The golden ring pulses, and the dragon fire bends toward him like a loyal servant. Simon screams in disbelief as his own flames vanish into the hero's control. The berserker attempts to reclaim his fire, but the energy remains locked away. Paul releases a concentrated beam of holy light directly into Simon's chest. The impact slams Simon into the stone floor, knocking him instantly unconscious. The prideful warrior lies still, defeated by a superior combatant. Paul stands tall, having barely exerted a fraction of his true potential. His rapid ascent to level 19 in just 1 month stuns the watching crowd. A tall girl with a calm demeanor walks toward the center of the arena. Aurora Bailey, a level 17 Taoist priest, approaches with a polite bow. She expresses a desire to test her skills against such a formidable opponent. Taoist priests remain incredibly rare, known for their mastery of complex seals and talismans. Paul greets her, openly confirming his current level to the curious girl. Aurora smiles, admitting she knows he held back his true strength during the first duel. She requests a genuine fight, eager to see the limits of his power. Paul nods in agreement, his aura flaring with divine, golden buffs. Aurora chants a ritual, calling upon spirits to manifest at her command. She unleashes a massive, swirling explosion to obscure the hero's vision. Paul vanishes, appearing instantly behind her with a warning about her positioning. Aurora dashes away, her protective gear glowing with a flickering, temporary shield. She tosses a handful of beans into the air, chanting a forbidden Taoist technique. The beans transform into spectral soldiers that swarm toward the hero. The soldiers move with unnatural speed, regenerating whenever they take damage. Paul realizes he must strike the source of the magic to stop the cycle. Aurora watches in amazement as the hero dismantles her array with ease. She suddenly raises her hands, signaling her complete surrender. Aurora explains that the gap between their levels makes a full fight pointless. She jokes that she prefers to stay conscious rather than ending up like Simon. Paul scans the crowd, offering a challenge to any other interested students. The remaining competitors turn away, suddenly finding other tasks to occupy their time. The second round draws to a close, with Paul firmly in the lead. Mr. Herbert watches the monitors, already planning how to recruit the hero. A different student manages to topple the weakened Simon in a separate match. Simon's ranking plummets to 16th place, his face twisted in pure rage. The competition timer hits 0, marking the official end of the freshman trials. Paul takes first place, followed by Evelyn in second and Aurora in third. The deans step onto the platform, preparing to present their respective academies. Mr. Herbert speaks for the War Academy, emphasizing survival and practical combat. Mr. Holt represents the Elemental Academy, promising mastery over the forces of nature. The Weapon, Tactical, and Logistics deans each make their competing pitches. The students stare in awe at the sheer volume of resources offered to them. Evelyn turns to Paul, wondering which path he will ultimately choose. Mr. Herbert offers private tutelage, including 3 rare A-rank skill books. The other deans immediately interrupt, raising their own stakes to attract the hero. Headmaster Tony Hawkins steps forward, silencing the bickering instructors. He offers to take Paul as his personal disciple, promising a unique education. Tony reveals a forbidden technique known as the bloodline fusion process. Paul listens intently as the headmaster describes the path to immense, unnatural strength. Simon watches from the sidelines, devastated by the loss of this opportunity. Tony presents Paul with a heavy gold medal from the Snowdragon Legion. The crowd falls silent, recognizing the prestige of such a rare national honor. Paul accepts the medal, though he remains skeptical of the true reason for the award. He follows the headmaster toward a private estate equipped for instant teleportation. The mansion walls shimmer with rows of ancient glowing potions. Tony explains the core of bloodline metamorphosis, the secret of the source blood. He reveals 3 vials sitting on a velvet table, each containing divine essence. The first vial glows with the light of a fallen angel. The second crackles with the raw, chaotic electricity of an ancient titan. The third hums with the primal, dominant energy of a true dragon. Paul stands before the 3 choices, preparing to alter his destiny forever. Angels, titans, and dragons occupy the highest tiers of power above level 60. Paul surveys the 3 glowing vials while considering the weight of his decision. He lacks deep knowledge of this world, yet his instincts remain sharp and focused. Tony explains that Titan and Dragon bloodlines primarily amplify raw strength and mana reserves. The headmaster gestures toward the angel vial, noting its alignment with Paul's holy affinity. Paul nods, accepting the angel source blood as his chosen path for transformation. His compatibility with the essence proves remarkably high, surprising the observing instructors. Tony mentions that Paul will meet his 4 senior disciples in the near future. Paul pauses, asking why he received such a prestigious gold medal for his service. Tony reveals that Paul's discovery exposed the Demon Legion's method of crossing dimensional cracks. The hero stares at the floor, horrified by the scale of the hidden threat. Tony confirms that hundreds of such cracks already exist within China's borders. Low-level creatures currently emerge, but the military legions remain on high alert. The school will soon issue missions to eliminate these otherworldly intruders across the nation. Mr. Hawkins hands Paul a teleportation device for his scheduled departure tomorrow at 9. Paul returns to his quarters, eager to finalize his preparation before the ritual. He recalls the S-grade luck potion obtained after defeating the demonic prince in battle. The hero swallows the liquid, hoping to tilt the odds of his random reward chest. He opens the crate, finding the rare Long Ning fruit inside the glowing light. The treasure significantly boosts his constitution and enhances his total spell damage. Paul arrives at the teacher's estate, hearing voices drifting from behind the heavy doors. Mr. Holt comments that an angel corpse is rare enough to ignite full-scale wars. Tony insists that he waited years to find a student worthy of this sacrifice. The headmaster guides Paul into the center of a complex, glowing magic formation. Paul removes his outer layers and sits cross-legged upon the cold, hard stone. Mr. Holt activates the runes, surrounding the room in a biting, unnatural chill. The temperature plummets, freezing the moisture in the air into jagged ice crystals. Mr. Holt notes that the hero possesses a hidden frost bloodline of immense quality. The angel essence begins to clash with the icy energy within Paul's veins. The 2 powers struggle for dominance, threatening to tear his physical form apart. Tony watches in silence, realizing the boy's lineage might trace back to ancient players. If the frost energy remains, the angel blood might be depleted during the forging. All the masters can do is watch, as stopping the ritual means certain death. Energy churns inside Paul, pulling his consciousness into a dark, swirling mental realm. A pale apostle floats before him, congratulating the boy on receiving a divine blessing. She promises him power unbound by morals, rules, or the constraints of humanity. Paul feels a surge of instinctive disgust, manifesting a holy hammer in his grip. He swings the weapon, striking the apostle before she can finish her tempting offer. The goddess chuckles in the shadows, finding the hero's defiance unexpectedly amusing. The apostle screams, ordering Paul to kneel and beg for forgiveness from her master. Paul calls her a minion of an evil god, refusing to bow to her commands. She binds his limbs with jagged dark chains, sneering about the consequences of defiance. Exia punches the hero, claiming she will lead him back to a righteous path. Pain rips through Paul's mind as malicious energy attempts to corrupt his very soul. Mr. Holt shouts that the presence of an evil god threatens to consume the boy. Tony notices the angel power growing brighter, refusing to yield to the darkness. The holy light and frost energy unite, shattering the chains binding the hero's spirit. Exia recoils, stunned by the sudden surge of divine power within the human vessel. The evil god himself appears, mocking the hero's struggle as a minor inconvenience. He stabs the frost wings, but the ice shatters and pulls the monster closer. Paul stabs the deity with spears of frost, forcing the creature to recoil. The god laughs, claiming all human power is merely a remnant of his grace. Dark rays slice through the air, binding Paul in heavy, suffocating chains once more. The hero fights back, focusing his remaining will into a fierce burst of light. He slashes through the darkness, severing the monster's connection to the holy realm. A sacred angel appears, smiling as she watches the monster's body begin to collapse. The holy energy obliterates the remaining traces of the evil god, absorbing every fragment. The angel spreads her wings over Paul, filling his body with pure, radiant energy. The formation explodes, bathing the entire room in a blinding golden brilliance. Mr. Holt observes that the two bloodlines have merged in a unique, permanent way. The system chimes, announcing that Paul has unlocked the six-winged angel bloodline. He gains the ability of magic immunity, resisting even non-damaging spells and purification. The divine mark grants him exceptional affinity for both light and ice elemental forces. His talent grade will continue to evolve, eventually reaching the elite S+ tier. Paul stands up, activating the new angel physique technique as his teachers watch intently. A wave of elemental energy ripples outward, multiplying his physical strength 5 times over. The room's defense system activates, sensing the overwhelming concentration of high-level energy. Tony warns him to deactivate the technique before the facility triggers a lockdown. Paul drops the aura, his body feeling sore and bloated from the sudden strain. He realizes the six-winged bloodline holds power that he must learn to master. Paul reviews his new status, noting the rare six-winged angel bloodline surging within him. He considers the S+ grade technique a powerful trump card for future battles. Mr. Holt observes the young man, noting that other freshmen cannot hope to match such rapid progress. Tony suggests refining the frozen lotus into a pill to help Paul's sister awaken her own dormant frost bloodline. Mr. Hawkins mentions that the university maintains a specialized department for forging such rare elixirs. The headmaster shifts the conversation to the recent encounter with the evil god's corruption. Paul explains that the protection of the god of light preserved his soul during the ritual. Hawkins nods, promising to investigate every secret detail regarding the dangerous incident. Paul calculates that he requires icicle grass to complete the requested frost pill recipe. He checks the school market through his interface, seeing the item listed at a reasonable point cost. A sharp knock echoes against the heavy wooden door of his quarters. Grace, a respected teacher, stands in the hallway with a folder of academic resources. She comments on the sudden spike in Paul's aura, recognizing the signs of bloodline refinement. Grace explains that Mr. Herbert, the housemaster, authorized the delivery of these high-tier materials. She notes that despite his training with Hawkins, his official courses remain under the Warhouse jurisdiction. Paul finds the mage's involvement with the martial-focused Warhouse surprisingly unconventional. Grace clarifies that mages often assist in combat training to provide tactical support. She hands over the resources, and Paul scans the contents with a hopeful gaze. His eyes land on the icicle grass, a vital ingredient he previously lacked. He realizes the luck potion's lingering effects have blessed his current mission. Grace warns him that venturing into the deeper parts of Tempest Valley shows reckless confidence. She stresses that he must master his defensive capabilities before taking such lethal risks. Paul remains silent about his system, which provides live data on environmental threat levels. Grace leads him to a subterranean floor filled with rows of deactivated training robots. She explains that these machines offer realistic combat practice with fully adjustable difficulty settings. The robots range from level 1 to 10, with higher tiers mimicking advanced combatants. Camera orbs hover in the air, ready to record every movement for a performance report. Grace advises him to start with lower settings, as the bots utilize real blades and ammunition. She departs for her lecture, leaving Paul alone with the complex control interface. Paul commands the orb to initiate the system and sets the difficulty to level 7. 50 combat robots materialize in the arena, their eyes glowing with a cold, red light. The system issues a warning as the machines raise their weapons to fire. Paul channels his new frost energy, forming a shimmering barrier that shatters the incoming bullets. He sweeps his hand forward, unleashing a swirling tempest that freezes the training floor solid. The ice spreads rapidly, encasing the robots in thick, immovable frost until they power down. The system chimes, announcing that the Level 7 test is cleared with high efficiency. Paul wonders if the highest difficulty setting will truly push his limits to the edge. He instructs the camera orb to activate the Level 10 combat protocol. The room shakes as a backup unit emerges, a sleek robot with supernatural-grade plating. The system identifies the machine's combat statistics as equivalent to a Level 25 veteran. Paul steps into the center of the room, ready to test his full potential. The robot lunges forward, unexpectedly manifesting a shimmering, icy light double. Paul attempts to disarm the machine, but it blocks his strike with a flash of holy energy. He dodges a beam of concentrated light, feeling the heat of the attack graze his shoulder. The robot's cannon shifts, transforming into a mechanical wolf that sprints toward him. Paul realizes the system is replicating the combat style of the deadly Tempest wolves. He channels his own angel physique, feeling his speed and strength amplify in the heat of battle. Evelyn checks her training account, curious about the student currently dominating the Level 10 room. She stares at the display in disbelief, knowing most freshmen struggle to pass the 6th level.